Hey, okay, this is your last Screencastify. I'm going to try to go fast. It's a lot of review, a little bit of new information, all worthwhile. We're going to talk about the path to the presidency first. In your book, it's pages 223 to 230, 225, I think. You've already read some of it, so it would just be review. Let's just look at this really quickly. Representative democracy by the numbers, approximately 325.7 million people. 510 elected officials, 89,000 governments, 3,031 countries, 35,888 towns, municipalities, 3,700, special districts. And then in, say, Indiana, just for example, there's 12,000. Oh no, independent, 12,884 school districts. Okay, so this is just some of the numbers that are interesting when we're talking about campaigns and elections. So let's talk about the path to the presidency. We already talked before about the steps. I just want to review them really quickly. So the first step is this invisible primary, like, am I a viable candidate? And once they decide if they are going to go for it. Then they enter the nomination phase. And the nomination phase means that they're going to have to go through like the primary process. In some states, they actually have primaries. Like actual primary elections. And so a primary is the selection of a nominee by a party. And in some places, they have like local caucuses. Iowa is really important. You're going to be hearing a lot more about Iowa because that caucus is coming up. It's the first state to hold a caucus each year, and it gets a lot of press attention. If they do well, they can build momentum, and that can have a really big impact on their viability as a candidate. A lot of other states, most other states use primaries. New Hampshire is really important, and you're going to be hearing about that a lot because it follows Iowa and is the very first state in the nation to have a primary election. Our primary actually moved up to March so that we would have more say in who actually gets the nomination. Before, it used to be in June. That was a little bit late. The Democratic Party used to use things like called super delegates when it got time to go to the national convention. They don't anymore. Here's what you need to know. The super delegates were basically people that had special positions within the party because they were elected to office or they had served in office. So they got to have a vote in addition to all the different delegates and have a say in who would get the nomination at the conventions. After the last Democratic National Convention, it was decided that they didn't want to do it that way anymore, so they got rid of it. And a lot of that is because of the tension between the Sanders and the Clinton factions of the Democratic Party. Once the primaries are over, then we have the Democratic National Committee, the Republican National Committee Convention, that we talked about just recently today, and then they pick their candidate, and then we go into the general election. The general election and the fall campaign is really important for the candidates. That's when they do like a lot of the work of trying to get elected. And then we actually have election day, which is the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. And that's when we start to see on election day kind of the projections of who's going to get the electoral votes. It's a really exciting night. I can't wait for you next year because you're going to probably be more into it and informed than you ever have been before. After that, remember, there is the meeting of the electors in December. They do their formal election, and then in January is the inauguration. So that's kind of the path for the president to get elected. Let's take a quick detour with the Electoral College and make sure that you remember that there was a rationale for that system. The founding fathers really wanted to do that because they were fearful and acknowledged the poor communication. They wanted to make sure that the best candidates would be selected. It was part of the compromises they made. They didn't necessarily trust the average voter to make good decisions and to be well informed. They decided that they would set up this Electoral College system, and each state would have as many electoral members as they did congressional members. So that means every state has 2 senators and at least 1 House of Representatives member. So every state has at least 3. So that's the minimum number that each state has. There are 3 allocated now, thanks to the 23rd Amendment, to Washington, D.C. for a total of 538 votes, and it takes 270 to win. California has the most with 55. And every time the census is done, we kind of look and reallocate how those votes or how the electoral college numbers are divided, but it's capped at 538 as of right now. Each state gets to pick or decide how they select their electors. And to win a state, in almost every single state, you only need to get a plurality of the votes to get all of their electoral votes. So that's that winner take all system that we've talked about so many times. That really causes a lot of focus to be on those swing states that sometimes vote red, sometimes vote blue, and why candidates focus on these other states and maybe don't go to California very much. California is pretty reliably blue. Why are they going to spend time there except for to get money? You need 270 votes to win. If there is no candidate that has a majority, then the founders kind of set up a system for how this would be handled. The House would select the president from the top 3 candidates, and each state would have 1 vote. It was done in 1800 and 1824, and then the Senate selects the VP. Obviously, there are criticisms of the Electoral College, and there's been more now recently because there are instances when the popular vote and the Electoral College vote doesn't align. Okay, let's talk very briefly and do a review of congressional elections. Again, you've read this when we read about the legislative branch, and those page numbers are on your mini syllabus so you can look at it. But really what you want to know is they also have primary elections. There's different types of primaries in states. Closed and open are the 2 most common. And then there are some that have blanket primary elections where independents can vote and people can mix and match their votes. The biggest factor that affects congressional election outcome is who is the incumbent. So the incumbency advantage is huge for the president, but really big for House members and also for senators. They have advantages such as the franking privilege, having a campaign staff, often gerrymandered districts, kind of sub rabbit hole here. You definitely need to understand gerrymandered districts. You definitely need to understand the Baker v. Carr decision, which is basically like the one man, one vote principle, and the Shaw v. Reno case here. You have to understand the franking privilege and how that furthers the incumbency advantage as well. And casework. Casework is always a big one. In terms of the types of elections, remember if there is an incumbent, that's the least competitive type of congressional election. An open seat is the most competitive. That means that there's 2 new people running. Yeah. Okay, that's it. That was really fast. I hope that it was a good reminder, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Get everything done. Bye.